Okay, we're going to learn a new word. Some of you have this word already, but most people don't. What is the Raquia? Well, many thousands of years ago, people read Scripture and they were looking at a word and trying to figure out what it meant or what it was, and if it was a noun, and they identified it by looking for it, and they found it. But in some cases, certain words that describe things that are just amazingly big or very early, they can't really quite picture what it is. And so many people formed opinions and ideas, and some of us in the Middle Ages, well, they drew pictures of what they imagined it to be. In the early part of the writings, we understand that Yahuwah created the heavens and the earth. And then he goes into some more description. He said it was formless and void, and darkness was on the face of the deep. It doesn't mention light until a little later. So he created the heavens and the earth in complete darkness, and it's infinity, it's space. And that is construed to be some solid object now, because people over the centuries developed cartoons and imaginary drawings that depicted what they thought it meant, interpretations. And there's nothing wrong with having a slightly incorrect idea. It's not really that bad. It's just, important that we don't fail to love one another. And we have to not be so severe with geometry or cosmology or what we imagine the universe to be. We can look up and see it. So that's where we're going to wind up in this video, is what are we really seeing? And what are we not seeing? Well, we're going to flip this around real quick, and you're going to look at my study notes so that you can review them, and you can look up words in the scriptural texts and test everything that you hear. Here we go. Hold on. Okay. What is the Raquia? It's R-A-Q-I-A in English, or Latin letters as we use. Bereshith 1, that's Genesis 1, verse 6, says, "And Elohim said, let there be a Raquia in the midst of the waters, and let it divide between the waters and the waters," unquote. Now that's the 6th verse. Let's look forward to another use of the word in Genesis chapter 1. That's Bereshith. Starting at verse 14. "And Elohim said, let lights come to be in the Raquia." That's H7549. "Of the Shamayim, to separate the Yom from the Lila, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for Yomim, days, and years. And let them be for lights in the Raquia of the Shamayim, to give light on the Eretz. And it came to be so. And Elohim made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the Yom," that's the day, "and the lesser light to rule the Lila," the night, "and also the stars. And Elohim set them in the Raquia of the Shamayim, to give light on the Eretz, and to rule over the Yom, or day, and over the Lila, the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good. And there came to be evening, and there came to be morning, the 4th Yom," unquote. That's the day that that we understand that Yahuwah created these lights on the 4th Yom. And he ended his work at that point for that day. And the 5th day began at evening. Now, in the Middle Ages, they had woodcuts, and this is a colorized woodcut of how the Roman Catholics basically understood the heavens and the earth to appear. You notice that it's a flat relatively flat area, and there's some kind of a dome with stars and the sun and the moon embedded in it, taking literally what the imaginary idea was for their interpretation of certain words in the text that you just now read. And it seems reasonable to let it remain that way until you make observations. And then you say, well, we must have been looking at it differently back then, but then is it so strange that people can't imagine that this is just a depiction of a false idea, that the Raquia is some kind of a solid, when it really isn't, when you imagine what the word really is. And I'm going to explain that to you. I'm not trying to trick you. I mean, this is not going to send anybody into the lake of fire. It's just a mistaken, simplistic idea based upon what was handed down for centuries and centuries. Raquia is the Hebrew word, you can look up, H7549. And we understand, at least some of us understand, that it's not a solid thing that has a membrane of some kind to it, but it's actually an open gap. It's a space. It's an expanse. Because the moon and the stars and the planets and everything, they don't seem to be hovering around in a dome, and they're not like on cycles or wheels or anything like that, but they're actually held in place by gravitation. And we can see that they have influence over each other. Like the moon, as it goes around the earth, has influences upon the oceans, and that's what causes the tides. After creating the separation between the waters above and the waters below, Yahuwah placed the greater and lesser lights in the space around the arets. The Old English word used is firmament, and it was used to describe the word Raquia, thinking that the separation involved a solid material object. Now we're going to talk about this some more and try to, if you can make it work, then it's okay, but some of us have trouble using the same word in other applications in their context. The same word, Raquia, is used to describe the space above and below the wings of the living creatures observed by Yechezkel, they call it Ezekiel, at Yechezkel chapter 1, verses 22 and 23. Now, in other words, he's describing the space above and below the wings of the living creatures that he was shown. And if Raquia meant a solid substance and not a space, then the wings would be useless appendages impeded by a solid that had no purpose being there. People imagine a dome around the earth or over the earth. But this increases the confusion because the text does not describe such a shape, or any shape, since the Raquia is spatial. It's not an object. If it were an object, we would see it very easily. But all we see is deep space. All these my hand have made, and all these that exist, declares Yahuwah. Yet to such a one I look, on him who is poor and bruised of spirit, and who trembles at my word. Raquia is exactly what it looks like. Space. Cartoon cosmology is not what we see. We all share in the blessed hope of Yahushua's appearing, and there is a wide range of ideas about the events that will unfold. Being vigilant and obedient is the weightier matter, because we will all make adjustments to our preconceived expectations. Geometry and cosmology may be fun to imagine for now, but our Redeemer is returning, and we want him to find us abiding in his word as he expects us to be. The unity of our belief in him is by far more important to him. Let me back that up and say it again. The unity of our belief in him is by far the more important thing to him. We'll be with him, and that's what matters most to us. Thanks for watching. And look these words up. You can just plug them into your web browser, and you can find out that what is it? It's H7549. Just put that in your web browser. And look it up in a interlinear, and check out the functionality of some living creature that has wings, that has an object between its, above and below its wings, and imagine that trying to fly or whatever they would be doing. So it doesn't work. But anyway, stick with it and remember to love one another above all, okay? See you in the next one. Bye.